In this video, you get a brief introduction about matrix multiplications and how to perform them in Python without using external libraries like numpy. I made this video because learning neural networks is easier when you understand a little bit of matrix operations by implementing it yourself with plain Python. Let's go! Look at this neural network. There is an input layer with 2 neurons and an output layer with 3 neurons. I identify the neurons. Look at Z1. It is connected to each input neuron and these connections have a weight. The same thing is true for Z2 and for Z3. Let's focus on the weights. With 2 inputs and 3 outputs, these weights can be represented in a matrix like this. 2 rows for 2 input neurons and 3 columns for 3 output neurons. Here you see the matrix and the neural network weights diagram. If you are watching this video, I assume you already know what a neural network is and that one of its tasks is to make predictions by multiplying inputs by weights. There are 2 notations for this: scalar notation and matrix notation. To prevent confusion with all the indexes for the weights and neurons, I will put some values in the network and work with them. The inputs have values 10 and 20. The weights going from input 1 to all the outputs have values 1, 2, 3. The weights going from input 2 to all the outputs have values 4, 5 and 6. Let me show you the scalar notation to calculate the outputs. This is all you need to calculate the outputs. This scalar notation and calculation is fine when the network is small. But when the network grows, calculating this manually becomes error-prone. Matrix multiplications allow us to calculate the outputs with any number of weights and inputs. Let's get back to the weight matrix. And let's add the inputs. To calculate the outputs, we use matrix multiplication. Let me show the formula. That is a clean notation, but what does it mean? Z is the collection of output neurons. W is the weight matrix. And X is the collection of inputs. So how do we calculate W times X? Let's look at some Python code. Here you see the weight matrix and the inputs. How do we loop through both lists in order to get 3 output values? For this, we need to transpose the weight matrix. If this is the weight matrix now, transposing will result in this matrix. Notice how the number of rows and columns have flipped. Let me show you how to transpose a matrix in Python. I use list comprehension to transpose the matrix. I print the result. Now we have 3 rows and each row has 2 columns. Just what we need. Here is the transposed weight matrix. And here are the inputs. Technically, they are in a structure called a column vector. So how is a matrix multiplied by a column vector? You take 1 times 10 plus 4 times 20, and we're done with the first output. Let's continue. Take 2 times 10, plus 5 times 20, take 3 times 10, plus 6 times 20. As you can see, this is the same as when we calculated the outputs before. So this is what a matrix multiplication does. How do we write this in Python? This time, we need 2 nested loops. The outer loop goes through the transposed matrix rows. The inner loop goes through a zipped list of weights for a certain output and their inputs. Finally, the result per output is summed. And the result is printed. There is a great website where you can check if your calculations are right. I hope this video helped you to understand matrix multiplication better and that writing the code to do this is not that hard. Of course, it is fine to use numpy to perform these calculations, but if you really want to understand what is happening, I encourage you to write the code to do the math yourself. See you in the future.